Hi everyone, welcome to today's session on mental health, and we are broken it down into two parts, that is understanding mental health and the perceptions around mental health. I have two wonderful guests joining me today, one a professional and the other a fellow student, as well as Adavi sign language interpreter. So I'd like my guests to introduce themselves and then we can start the conversation from there.
Okay, so I'm Yehon Shadu Figezi. I'm part of CCA, which is counseling, coaching, and academic advising on Ashesi. I'm a counselor by profession. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Omar Farouk Musa. I'm a student and a peer counselor.
All right. So thank you both for sparing some time to join us today. So we'd like to start with the general understanding of what mental health is. So what exactly defines mental health and what are the various aspects of it in terms of the different subsections that we can have under mental health?
Okay. So that's a good question, and it's a broad one. Mental health borders on your physiological, your psychological, and your social well-being, right? And it basically informs how you act, how you feel, how you think, right? And due to this, it's when a person portrays, right, that they can normalize stresses that come to them, and then they can be productive in life, and then they can also just live life, then it means they are mentally healthy.
What would you like to add on?
Okay, so the only thing I like to add to that is the physiological aspects. So I think popular belief tells you that mental health, like common knowledge, like the layman's knowledge would be, it's all in the mind, it's all about the way you think, the way you behave. But there's a physiological aspect to it as well in terms of, they call it, the technical name is psychosomatic. So if you are mentally unwell, right, it can have physical symptoms. You can actually feel, it can affect you physically in a way. I can't give an example right now, but that's the physiological aspect of mental health. So if you are mentally well, it affects you physically. Mentally unwell, it can also affect you physically.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next part we'd like to dive into is who exactly can be affected by mental health conditions. Through our survey, we had some responses concerning the different kinds of people, for lack of a better word, that can be affected by mental health conditions. So, from your experiences, is there a particular definition as to who? Is there a particular group of people that we can say that yes, you people are the only ones who can have mental health conditions, or it could be just anybody? What exactly is the facts concerning that particular aspect of mental health?
Okay, so I just want to start off by saying it's normally or often called mental health disorder, right? And it's only called a disorder when you have been diagnosed. But to make it more relatable, we prefer to say mental health concerns or conditions, so as not to put a stigma, right, on them. Yeah. But mental health conditions, interestingly, right, relates to everybody. Yes. Because it's graded in severity, and it often starts as mild. Mild is often dealing with an issue that pains for about a month, and then it moves on to acute, which is dealing with an issue that goes on for about 1 month to 6 months, and then it becomes chronic, where you are dealing with it like it's become a part of you. It's when it pushes beyond a year, then we target as chronic. But even that, it depends on how severe it is. That's when we say yes. And it should be that you have been diagnosed by a psychiatrist to say you have a mental health condition. And so often the understanding out there is that it's only adults, but facts prove that mental health conditions applies to everyone. It's from childhood, it affects children, it affects adults as well, right? And so everyone can be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. We have the DSM-5, which is a manual that is used for diagnosis, where you actually have to have symptoms that fall into, then you can be diagnosed. And so if somebody shows these symptoms and is diagnosed, then we say the person has a mental health condition. But if not, then, but I still want to stress, we all go through some kind of challenge in some way in relation to our mental health.
Thank you, Nishira. In your experience as a student, what is your perspective on who can be affected by a mental health condition?
You see, the thing about a mental health condition, right, is that it depends on, like Ms. Nshua rightly said, the severity. Because we all have a certain aspect of these traits in us. Everyone is anxious, everyone is happy or sad. When you're very sad, like when certain symptoms come, certain forms of sadness becomes too severe, then it becomes depression. I think those are the two that come to mind right now, anxiety and depression, right? Everyone has a stress. Yes, exactly. Stress can also lead to other conditions, which, like I mentioned earlier, some of the physical aspects as well. If you are really stressed, you become fatigued, exhausted. Some people even feel physical pain. Yes, that's how the mind affects the body physically. So the idea is everyone actually, there's not a single person on the planet who hasn't gone through a challenge. But to be diagnosed with a condition or a disorder it means that, let's say, your challenge is more severe than what is typical. That should be it.
Okay, thank you so much. So piggybacking off the idea of stigma, we've through the survey and discussions as peer counselors ourselves, we've realized that there's a very interesting perception surrounding seeking help, as well as letting people know about mental health conditions if you do happen to have one. So I would like to pick your thoughts on what exactly do you think drives this stigma, and do you think it's a cultural issue? Do you think it's a general social issue? What factors do you think come to play under the topic of stigma in mental health?
Okay, so I wouldn't just relegate it to cultural and social in as much as they seem to be the major blocks as to influencing stigma. But I somehow will push it also to individual choices as well as to why there's been that struggle to eradicate stigma, right? Let's go to culture. We have our culture that somehow believes that if you have an issue, you could get over it or just get done with it. So we have timelines as to when people should just get something like grief. Like we stretch it. If you are stretching grief, it's like this person is too weak. This person is not that strong. They can't deal with issues. They are not resilient and all that, right? And so we begin to attack them from that perspective because culturally we're made to believe you have to be strong. And strength is in the fact that you are being seen as overcoming so many things that come at you. And so when something comes at you or you have a concern, just get over, snap out of it. And that would mean that you are okay. And it really affects the human being because in as much as we are confronted with this cultural dilemma, also I want to bring this also in. Culturally, we somehow feel counseling is not a thing. As a Western ideology we are trying to push down here. And so in Africa, basically what we deal with is it should just be conflict you need somebody to solve or be a mediator, but any other issue you have, you should be able to deal with it yourself. And so why do you actually need someone's help in dealing with your issues, right? But in spite of these effects, I somehow see the human being, because I've had people come here with some concerns as what they would say, how they would see me. And so I can't come, or I struggle to come in here because of that. So if we could rather look at it from educating the individual to be more mentally aware of their own concerns and to embrace the fact that, yes, I need help. Not that society says or dictates or culturally, this is what is the norm. Then we're able to have that stigma eradicated. Yeah.
Uma, you're a care counselor and you're a student in HSC. So I also want to know from maybe your conversations with friends or some counseling sessions you had, what are some of the experiences you had regarding the stigma conversation?
Honestly, I've not really had this stigma conversation with anyone particularly. But what I'd like to add to what Miss Inshra said is just a little quote. See, the idea is human. It's she mentioned that it is a human thing, right? It stems from ignorance. So the truth is, people usually are averse to, or you can say they fear what they don't understand. So if you get them to understand that, okay, this is the reality on the ground, if you can enlighten them a little bit, naturally, they will be more open. But that also depends on whether or not they are willing to accept accept the reality on the ground. So that's basically what I have to say. It's basically the stigma behind mental health. It's not only about culture. It's not only about what else social. It's also a human thing. Yeah. This is yeah.
So jumping into these areas, there are also these perceptions concerning sympathy and empathy towards people with mental health conditions, how they are treated generally. So we are going with the assumption of somebody who has been diagnosed and aware that this is something that they have and they have probably shared it with others. What are some of your experiences or ideas surrounding how they are treated in terms of empathy from general society?
Okay, so I like the question and I'm happy to hear, because sometimes we get confused with what sympathy is and what empathy is, right? Empathy borders more on trying to hear and see the person, right? And also to relate to them in the light of how they are feeling. That means you mirror their feeling or whatever thing they are going through in order to get them to understand that you are being there for them or you are giving them support. Sympathy, I would say from my experience, especially with people that have mental health conditions, they don't appreciate sympathy. They feel you are pitying them when you show off as being sympathetic. It rather feeds off as a stigma, meaning they need help, assistance, no more of support. I know it's English words we are interplaying, but it's more like this person is weak and I have to show some form of relatability. And so, it saddens me that they are in this condition. No, they hate it. They would prefer that you mirror their feeling of you do understand them from their perspective and the issues they are dealing with, more than just showing them sympathy, right? And trying to show that you are trying to care. I could say that, yeah.
Yeah, this is a very difficult one for me too, because I'm struggling to, in terms of sympathy and empathy, right? I'm not really well versed in the idea, and what she's saying is actually very new to me. That people people with conditions, people who are diagnosed, don't really appreciate sympathy, because in my opinion and based on my experience, it's very necessary. you need a bit of grace from your support, your caregiver, or the one giving you support. You need them to be able to understand, because not every time that you can, mirror what you are going through. It's absolutely impossible. Even you yourself that you are going through the challenge, you yourself can't even explain it properly. So the idea is, when they can't empathize, when they don't have a similar experience that they can recall and understand, they'll have to just, manage and try and work with what they have, like sympathize, try and accommodate your challenges.
Okay, so I just wanted to come in. So, what he says still bordered on empathy more than sympathy, right? And I would want to explain it in the sense that even trying to give support by accommodating someone with a mental health condition is in some way trying to mirror the way they feel. Like when we say empathizing, it doesn't necessarily mean you should have a similar experience to mean you are showing empathy, right? It could be that you don't have that experience at all, but you are coming off from a sense of care, which is not from a point of pity. That's just basically what I want to say.
Thank you both so much. So to wrap up our first part on understanding mental health, we would just like to have the general understanding from your experience here in HSE, because this is directed for HSE students. So Ishira, I know you've been here for quite a short time, but you still definitely had people coming here. So I would just like to know why, or what are some of the things that you've noticed, or some trends or patterns that you've seen from HSC students, and why do you think those things occur, and what do you think we can do to move forward in that space?
Okay, so I think I'm just running my mind through cases that probably have come through. I just would give some examples, right? If it's bordering on just concerns people have had, right? I would say I've had to deal with people dealing with separation anxiety, especially freshers that just come in, right? Settling into a different setting, it becomes difficult away from loved ones and all that. I also have dealt with imposter syndrome, more bordered on low self-esteem, where exceptional students find it difficult to accept they are good, and also those who used to be exceptional, but because of how Ashase is like, are not being as they used to be, also struggle with accepting their new state, right? And being able to adjust and focusing on their academics and doing well. There's also other stresses like relationship stresses of people isolating. There are those in relationships with relationship issues as well, right? And several others I would say I've heard from people that have come through here. On the issue of probably a mental health condition, anxiety, depression, PTSD, yes, are things we deal with as professionals. Schizophrenia, those are things we deal with as professionals, yeah. So it's varied and it's vast. Some too just come in because one, they want anonymity to just feel free and talk because they have some issue they just want off their chest. And the space is open for all of that.
You're a peer counselor. I'd also like to know your experience as a peer counselor with the HSC community. Are there similar cases you have seen? What are the trends and patterns that you have also noticed?
Okay, so I think there are two things I can mention. The first one is most of the people I have spoken to, the people who have come to me, right, that have been able to work with they usually come with, family issues, something along the line of something from home that's bothering them and has come to affect their schoolwork, whether it's uh, losing a loved one or and even having another loved one in an accident, or another loved one in also having a similar condition, a mental health condition that they don't understand as well. Yes, these are some general ideas. These are some broad ideas. This is what I have been able to work with people around.
Thank you so much. So this wraps up the first part of our conversation for the general understanding for mental health. We'll be back to continue the second.